Kansas City.
Yes. When you look at that picture, you know where Jillian's going to end up. But we don't know where Rob's going to be, right?
So wait a second. Will they co-host with each other?
Jillian's going down with us,
right,
and then he's going to Iowa because the first caucus next
has come out, and as we have shown you their headlines, this is from the op-ed page, and they summarize the bottom line. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the graphic. The bottom line of impeachment, day 9. What fresh hell? So we heard a lot of questions and answers, and today's going to be day 2. The Republicans believe, according to a number of news outlets, that they have the votes to block the witnesses. It looks like Mitch McConnell sat down for a face-to-face with Lisa Murkowski. She was tight-lipped when she left. She would not talk about it. Everybody wants to hear the final day of questions, and then they will have a vote tomorrow, whether or not they're going to be witnesses, and then perhaps either to acquit the president or something else.
Well, Senator Alexander said, I am not going to vote to call witnesses. Mitt Romney is going to. They're looking at Murkowski now to see how she will vote.
Right, and Cory Gardner, the toughest
Cory Gardner
in the Senate, said, nope.
Yeah.
I don't need witnesses.
Cory Gardner's going to do that. What's fascinating about the 8 hours yesterday and 8 hours today is I was not clear that they can ask themselves questions. First off, I look great today. Can you read that out loud, John Roberts? And then they'd have production value to questions that was supposed to move the story further. They use it as opportunities to pontificate about things they already told us 9,000 times. One of the most intriguing things was when you had Mitt Romney basically ask, when did the president first get concerned about aid to the Ukraine? He wanted to find out if it lined up directly with Joe Biden declaring, I'm running for president, if there was an overlap there. So other times you had Schiff making things up, like, for example, bribery.
As a charge.
As a charge. Well, it's not even a charge. One time I watched Schiff say Donald Trump wanted to do this to please Russia so he can build a Moscow tower. What are you even talking about? It's farcical. If you don't have anything to say relevant, you should be told to sit down.
But why would they change what they've been doing all along?
Because there are rules.
Oh, there are rules, and you got the Chief Justice, and in a moment we're going to tell you about an extraordinary ruling he made regarding the whistleblower. But nonetheless, there was a lot of back and forth all day long, 8 hours worth of it. If you missed it, we have summarized here some of the highlights.
If President Trump had more than one motive for his alleged conduct, such as the pursuit of personal political advantage, how should the Senate consider more than one motive in its assessment of Article 1?
So once you're into mixed motive land, it's clear that their case fails. There can't possibly be an impeachable offense at all.
Is it true that Sean Misko, Abigail Grace, and the alleged whistleblower were employed by or detailed to the National Security Council during the same time period between January 20, 2017 and the present?
We have no knowledge of that other than what's in those public reports, and I don't want to get into speculating about that.
If President Obama had evidence that Mitt Romney's son was being paid $1 million per year by a corrupt Russian company and Mitt Romney had acted to benefit that company, would Obama have authority to ask that that potential corruption be investigated?
The hypothetical is a bit off because it presumes that in that hypothetical that President Obama was acting corruptly, or there was evidence he was acting corruptly with respect to his son.
Yeah, that is not a good answer, Adam. You might want to retract that.
So Chief Roberts was asking what happened here is they got to submit their questions, both sides, and then he got to read them out loud, and they got to respond, and they each got 5 minutes, the 5-minute time limit on each answer. It's going to be a total of 16 hours of questionings that started yesterday, and then it will continue today.
So one of the big, here's, just real quick, here's Alan Dershowitz. He's just talking in the big picture. He's getting some criticism about where he stands, mainly because he's not standing on the left. Listen.
If a president does something which he believes will help him get elected in the public interest, that cannot be the kind of quid pro quo that results in impeachment. Anything the House wants to do to impeach is impeachable. That's what's happened today. That places the House of Representatives above the law. We've heard much about no one's above the law. The House of Representatives is not above the law.
Damning words. Yesterday, at one point, the president did send out, did you know he's on Twitter? He sent out a tweet that said game over. And what he was doing was he was linking to a video taken by, it was a broadcast from Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty in August of 2019. It's where John Bolton actually talks about the phone call. And we're going to play a little bit of it, but it also talks, apparently he says there was no quid pro quo, and he talks about how the United States would like to get rid of the corruption and things like that. Nonetheless, the president said game over after he saw this video.
We'll be meeting President Zelensky. He and President Trump have already spoken twice. President called to congratulate President Zelensky on his election and then on his success in the parliamentary election. They were very warm and cordial calls. We're hoping that they'll be able to meet in Warsaw and have a few minutes together.
That's interesting. That completely contradicts his book, his forthcoming book.
Which is so secret, they can't publish it.
Right, January 23rd. So that is a different take on the meeting. They were supposed to meet in Warsaw, but I think we had this problem, a natural disaster was looming, so the president sent the vice president there. This could have all ended if they just met in Warsaw, but wasn't to be. So John Bolton had a different take there. I don't like the idea of people making John Bolton out to be a liar. I don't. People, he's sat on this couch before. He's not a liar. They have a differing of opinion, but questioning his credibility, I don't think there's.
You're saying maybe the New York Times, maybe whoever reported that read the book and got something out of it that maybe John Bolton didn't say?
I would say that, but he could answer a question, but not answer a question completely, and he could not be a liar. But January 23rd, evidently, the White House, when looking at his book, sent a letter back to him and said, Mr. Bolton, essentially, you got top secret things in these passages, so you got to take them out.
Right.
It's typical. I'm glad you're letting us vet it because you got to take this out. Next thing you know, these excerpts are out in the public mainstream because the New York Times got a look at them.
Right.
So that's an interesting scenario to this. John Roberts published the letter yesterday.
But in addition, because there's top secret stuff, did the New York Times get access to the what the NSC says is top secret stuff? Because the White House has said that they will work with him to fix the book, but he's on the fast track. You know, his website went live on Amazon. A lot of people in the White House feel that this was just a naked play to sell books, but nonetheless, there's secret stuff in there, and they cannot publish it. Going back to the part where the president said game over, there were two video sound bites. One was Mr. Bolton talking about corruption, and we're going to have the longer soundbite later. But also, Fox News actually found a soundbite of Adam Schiff. Keep in mind, right now, Adam Schiff is all about getting John Bolton to testify in front of the Senate because he's got a really good story. But you know what? As you look back to 2005, once upon a time, Adam Schiff didn't think John Bolton was that credible. Watch.
Particularly given the history where we've had the politicization of intelligence over WMD, why we would pick someone who the very same issue has been raised repeatedly, and that is John Bolton's politicization of the intelligence he got on Cuba and on other issues. Why would we want someone with that lack of credibility? I can't understand.
So if you pick John Bolton, the Republicans going to answer with at least Hunter and Joe Biden. And as Jay Sekulow said yesterday, looked at Adam Schiff, and maybe you, Adam Schiff, maybe we're going to pull you out. And then you're going to have all these motions, and we're going to extend this thing for weeks. But it's around John Bolton. And Lev Parnas was out there with his ankle bracelet.
Yeah.
He was trying to, it's an ankle bracelet.
Yeah.
He was out there trying to sell himself
yesterday. He took the
yesterday.
train to Capitol Hill, and he took the train to D.C., walked over to Capitol Hill, went in to get his ticket that Chuck Schumer left at the ticket counter for him so that he could go into the impeachment hearing. But it turns out you can't have electronics inside the Senate chambers, so he's not going to be able to go.
But he gave all these interviews implicating Ron Johnson and Lindsey Graham, handed over his phone, which had a bunch of websites that are porn and sex related.
Do you know how many times we go to the Wayback Machine? You always call it the Wayback Machine.
Love that Wayback Machine.
And it always proves Democrats, they were for something and then they changed their mind because they hate this president so much. Think about immigration. Remember they all voted for border security a long time ago, and then the president comes into office, he wants to build the wall, he wants border security, and then they're all of a sudden against it.
I was talking to somebody about this particular video, and they said, you know, Adam Schiff, you know, when you look at that video, essentially hated John Bolton until he needed him, and now he loves him. It's just one of those things that happens in Washington. Something else that happens in Washington, they think about the big picture. Mark Thiessen did last night, I believe, right here on the channel, and he thinks that what is being played out on television screens all across America is having not only the American public see what's going on, but finally the Senate is realizing what's happening.
I think the Senate is waking up to the fact that they've been set up by the House. So Tom Cotton asked the question of Pat Philbin today, which I think is the most important moment so far of the questioning, that he asked, did the House ever try to litigate executive privilege? And Philbin said, no, they didn't. And not only did they not do it, they blocked the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia from ruling on executive privilege. What happened at the same time? They passed an article of impeachment accusing the president of obstruction of Congress because he went to the courts. And then Nancy Pelosi held the articles of impeachment in order to force...
One thing is pretty clear is that the best sales point that Mitch McConnell has to not have witnesses is Chuck Schumer and Adam Schiff, because they're looking to play this out, elongate this entire process, continuing to change the rules. Their end game is to extend this game. And instead of saying, well, we want to get to the truth, it's pretty obvious, they want to play this out, and they'll never be satisfied. And that's why I think Mitch McConnell won over Cory Gardner and perhaps won over Lisa Murkowski. I don't know if Mitt Romney's winnable.
Just one other note, and we're going to talk a little more extensively about it. At one point in one of the question cards, Rand Paul put the name of the whistleblower, and they had a sidebar, and John Roberts said, essentially, according to the reports on it, apparently Roberts initially tried to block even general questions about the whistleblower, and then the Republicans were talking about, we're going to rebuke you, and he changed his mind, and he just X'd out that particular name. Sounds like Rand Paul's going to try to do it again today because he feels the identity of the whistleblower should be public knowledge.
All right, here's Jillian. Hey, Jillian. Oh, no?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm here, but you're going somewhere else.
We have Todd Pyro coming up next because in less than 2 hours, the deadly coronavirus could be declared a global emergency as fears spread overnight.
All right, it's not Jillian yet. Todd, what's the latest?
Yeah, this is real serious stuff, guys. The World Health Organization will meet to decide whether the deadly coronavirus is a global emergency. All this as the outbreak spreads to 19 countries. The White House assembling a task force to monitor the outbreak, with cases growing by more than 1,000 per day. This virus killing at least 170 people and infecting more than 7,700 others. The Philippines confirming its first case just moments ago. 5 cases confirmed so far in the U.S. Health officials stressing that as of now, though, no need to panic.
We do think that the risk for the general communities in the United States from this infection is very low. The way we want to keep it that way is by doing our basic public health functions.
This outbreak originated at a seafood market in Wuhan, China. Nearly 200 United suspending some flights to the region. Steve Ainsley and Brian, back to you.
All right, Todd, thank you very much. I saw some images of the extraordinary measures that people in China are taking, including taking great big water bottles, like a Poland Spring bottle, a 10-gallon thing, cutting out the bottom and wearing that across when they are out and about.
Yeah.
There's
like
an
they're
article
pledging a fraternity.
New York Post, it says Americans are stuck there. They're amid the coronavirus outbreak. Say that the city is like a Twilight Zone episode.
It is.
All right. Meanwhile, coming up at 7:15, we'll get more on this with the person leading the charge for a vaccine, Anthony Fauci, member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force. And Jillian, keep in mind, as I toss to you,
still there.
Corona. People a lot of people think it has something to do with the beer.
And it has
nothing to do with the beer.
Nothing to do with the beer, right?
Yes.
And
Still drink beer.
Sure, but people do need to take this seriously, so
Yes.
stay up to date on all the information. We will keep you updated on that front. In the meantime, let's talk about this, because overnight, Kobe Bryant honored with a moment of silence in the first game at the Staples Center since his death. The Los Angeles Kings paying tribute before their game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Meantime, Bryant's heartbroken widow speaking for the first time. Vanessa Bryant writing on Instagram, in part, quote, "There aren't enough words to describe our pain right now, but we wake up each day trying to push because Kobe and our baby girl Gigi are shining on us to light the way." Bryant also creating the Mamba on 3 front to raise money for the crash victims' families. The man accused of killing his estranged wife is in dire condition after a suicide attempt. POTUS pleaded not guilty to killing Jennifer Dulos. Today, President Trump is visiting a manufacturing plant in Michigan. He's expected to celebrate the historic USMCA deal signing, potentially creating 600,000 jobs in the U.S.
There's never been anything like it. This is a colossal victory for our farmers, ranchers, energy workers, factory workers, and American workers in all 50 states.
The president is also holding a rally in Des Moines tonight ahead of the Iowa caucuses. And the big game is almost here. The San Francisco 49ers will take on the Kansas City Chiefs in a highly anticipated Super Bowl matchup this Sunday. And ticket prices are at record highs. According to SeatGeek, the average resale ticket price is nearly $7,000. That's $2,000 more than last year's tickets. Rapper Kanye.
And we will be there Sunday morning.
We'll be there today.
That is crazy to spend that much on a ticket. I mean, you could buy the largest TV that they sell at a store.
And it's free on TV.
Right.
Fox. All right.
Thanks, Julian.
Thank you. Meanwhile, still ahead.
One New York magazine is not feeling the burn, where they're calling Sanders' potential nomination, quote,
Senator Bernie Sanders gaining ground ahead of the Iowa caucuses on Monday, but not everybody's feeling the burn. New York Magazine claiming, quote, running Bernie Sanders against Trump would be an act of insanity. The magazine calling out his, quote, long history of radical associations. Sanders campaigned for the Socialist Workers' Party and praised communist regimes. To nominate Sanders would be insane. Really? Here's the reaction. Former Bernie Sanders campaign staffer, Teslyn Figueroa, who joins us from Houston. Teslyn, good morning.
Good morning.
I don't remember New York Magazine having these criticisms back in 2016. What's going on?
Your memory serves you correctly. Per Democrat establishment, usual politics is too little and too late. The bottom line is, if it is insane with him running against Trump, it's just as insane as all the alleged moderates who stole his policies. They had no issue with that. They took his message, they embraced it, and they've allowed him to grow. This is just bottom line, the establishment in fear now because they've given him a ride, I would say, during the debates. They haven't challenged him on anything. They really haven't vetted him fully. And so now they see that his popularity has grown. While Biden was playing nice and getting along with everyone and never attacking Senator Sanders on any of his leftist policies, now they see that Sanders actually has a shot to win Iowa and New Hampshire. And so this is simply just a panic.
You know, Peter Doocy, who used to live upstairs in my house and who's been covering Iowa for the last, it seems like, year, he tells me that the biggest, most enthusiastic rallies on the Democratic side are Bernie Sanders. And Joe Biden, while the establishment may say he's the only electable candidate on the Democratic side, Bernie's the one with the enthusiasm.
Absolutely. Well, for the last 3 years, 4 years, you know, they've been organizing all around the country. Our Revolution, specifically with Senator Nina Turner at the helm, has visited every state almost twice in the last 4 years while everyone else was thinking about running. They were actually organizing, and they've been building that momentum. And so people want to dream big. I'm not a socialist. I tell people that all the time. But he has been able to send a message that big structural change is necessary. We all know that without a Democratic House and Senate, none of his policies will be passed. Let's be honest about that. But he's been able to create a vision, and moderates just have not sold the business, been about a good job of selling their message on why their message is better than Bernie Sanders. They took the easy way out, copied his message, tried to pretend they were progressive when they're not, and now they're paying the consequence for it.
Yeah, some New York Magazine calls him out on some of the agenda items, getting rid of private health insurance. We've heard a number of the Democrats say that, banning fracking, letting prisoners vote, decriminalizing the border, giving free health care to illegals. All the Democrats said that at that first debate, and of course eliminating ICE. But you're right, at the beginning of the cycle, so many of the Democrats sounded just like Bernie Sanders, and now they're saying, vote for him, you're crazy, because they feel he can't win. Or it's just the Joe Biden people who are saying Joe Biden's the only guy who can win.
Yeah, a little bit of both. They see that Joe Biden's candidacy is not panning out, you know, the way they expected. He's been challenged on his past record, as well as Senator Warren, who I thought has done a great job up until the last couple of debates, you know, where she actually got challenged. Do you support Medicare for all or do you not? And so it's just simply crumbling, and Bernie really looks like their only hope. And that may not fare well against Trump. Let's just be honest about it. But this is a problem Democrats is going to have to fix.
Well, and Democrats in Iowa are going to caucus on Monday night. Let's see how many people stand in Bernie's corner. Teslyn, thank you. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet. All right. Meanwhile, it's been 4 years in the making, and tomorrow Britain finally says goodbye to the European Union, the Brexit.
I know you want to ban our national flags, but we're going to wave you goodbye.
If you disobey the rules, you get cut off.
It's all over. Finished.
It's finished, he said. The man who started it all, Nigel Farage, weighs in next.
Some quick headlines for you. 6 suspects accused of running a $7 million drug ring are back on the streets, all because of New York State's bail reform law. 750,000 envelopes of heroin and fentanyl were found inside a Bronx apartment. All 6 men are due back in court next month. And psychedelic mushrooms are now decriminalized in Santa Cruz, California. The city council unanimously voting on a resolution making them a low priority for drug investigations and arrests. Oakland and Denver decriminalized psychedelic mushrooms last year. So, Brian, eat your fungus.
Thank you, I will. Meanwhile, it's been 4 years in the making, and tomorrow, get this, tomorrow, the UK will officially leave the European Union. Here's a look back at how history unfolded.
Has asked me to form a new government.
It is the worst parliamentary defeat in British history, and it's a clear sign that there is absolutely no support now for her current version.
I saw waving the British flag in Parliament, responsible for all this, Brexit founder Nigel Farage. Nigel, what could you be thinking right now? And for those watching in America, is this it? Really it?
What am I thinking? Well, I started campaigning 27 years ago for us to leave the European Union, and I thought for much of that time I might become the patron saint of lost causes. But you know what? It caught on, and it is happening. The big historic break happens tomorrow night at 11 o'clock UK time. It is the biggest constitutional change, positional change for us in the world for perhaps 500 years. So this is a really, really big deal. The Conservative Party under Mrs May made a complete mess of the whole thing. I came back into it, won the European elections last spring, got her to resign, and Boris has come in and he's saying all the right things. So the break happens tomorrow. After that, there will be negotiations on a future trade deal. I've no doubt that the EU will try and keep us tied to their rule book, and Boris needs to be really strong in the next phase. But be in no doubt about one thing. Tomorrow night, we pass the point of no return. We're leaving. We're becoming an independent country. We've won.
So it really helps because we know Theresa May didn't want this to begin with, so her heart wasn't in it perhaps, which is why it wasn't done. And you have a charismatic leader now who you pushed and prodded, who did exactly what you wanted, called for new elections, got himself a majority, and then went ahead and did it. You also say that Italy, Denmark, and Poland could likely be next to leave?
Yes, I do. I mean, Denmark are not dissimilar to the UK in many ways. They're a lot smaller, but they've, ever since they first joined, been nervous about the loss of sovereignty. Italy finds herself stuck in a currency called the euro, which may be good for Germany, but it's no good for the Mediterranean at all. And I think when the next financial downturn or banking crisis comes, Italy's going to be asking itself some serious questions. And Poland, I mean, 30 years ago, they were living under the Soviets, being told what they can and can't do. And now they've got Brussels telling them how they should appoint court judges, what they should do with social legislation on gay marriage and much else. And, you know, don't tell the Polish what to do. They've had enough of that.
Absolutely, and they've been such stalwart allies, too, in different ventures. Lastly, so disappointed that Boris Johnson famously gets along well with the president. We asked them, you guys, not to go and subscribe to Huawei. It's going to it is going to sacrifice our intelligence. 5G with Huawei is a no-go, and you did it anyway. Not you, but Boris Johnson signing on with China anyway. What's happening with that?
This is not just America, by the way. Australia, you know, who have very close economic links with China, even they, in 2012, said, no, we don't want Huawei part of our cyber and digital infrastructure. I'll tell you the truth. If you look at the UK advisory board of Huawei, it is full of senior former civil servants, big business prime minister, who's now an interlocutor between the UK and Chinese governments. Our political class are in the pay of China. The establishment wanted this to happen, and Boris has gone with the establishment. He risks intelligence sharing with America, Australia, Canada and New Zealand, and I really worry what this means for a future trade deal with the USA. I'm concerned. I think it is an absolutely awful decision.
Right, and that's why our Secretary of State is scrambling to go there to get them to reverse it.
Yeah.
It's just not a good sign. Maybe it's because he believes that President Trump is not popular with the British people and doesn't want to be pushed around, and Boris Johnson wants to show his independence streak. But however, the downside is too real, too great to let this be played by politicians. Final thought?
Yeah, look, why take the risk? There are other providers, Samsung, Nokia, Ericsson. These are all people we could work with on our new 5G network. We do not need the Chinese to be involved in this. And the argument they're a bit cheaper, well, I'll tell you what price security? And that's the risk we're taking.
Nigel, you changed the world, and you certainly changed the Brits' future. Congratulations, big day for you, and thanks for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
All right. Meanwhile, straight ahead, Democrats and the president's lawyers have had their say. Now it's up to the Senate to decide if we'll hear from witnesses in the
For a criminal trial in an ordinary court, and Mr. Schiff had done what he just did on the floor here and start talking about crimes of bribery and extortion that were not in the indictment, it would have been an automatic mistrial.
Well, let's bring in Fox's senior judicial analyst and host of Liberty File on Fox Nation, Judge Andy Napolitano. Judge, he's right, isn't he?
Well, normally a conversation like this, does the allegation implicate crimes, would be heard in the courtroom out of the presence of the jury. And then the judge, in this case Chief Justice Roberts, would decide whether or not it does implicate crime. So one way to look at this is by accusing him of abusing his power, by asking for a favor from President Zelensky, the Democrat.
You're accusing of something that you're not
extortion. So what happened is Adam Schiff said it's extortion, it's bribery, and the president's legal team is saying that's not fair. You never put that in the articles of impeachment.
This would
He's
not
saying,
happen.
you know this, you're a lawyer.
This would not happen in front of a jury in a criminal case. It absolutely would be a mistrial if it were stated in front of a jury in a criminal case. But this is a different kind of jury, where they each get to accuse the other side of all kinds of things. Arguably, the House Judiciary Committee report is part of the charges against the president, and that includes all these things that Congressman Schiff was mentioning yesterday.
One other thing, and we mentioned it a little bit, we're going to talk later about it, is apparently Tuesday, not on television, John Roberts, the Chief Justice, squared off against Rand Paul. Rand Paul wanted to ask a question and would name the whistleblower. And apparently there's back and forth. The Republicans were going to rebuke John Roberts, and eventually he went, because they were going to ban all references to the whistleblower generally in the intelligence community. Ultimately, they did not allow the question, and now Rand Paul says he's coming back again. Today it sounds like because he has not been recognized.
I am volunteering to arbitrate this dispute since they are both friends of mine. However, the Chief Justice knows he has to recognize Senator Paul as a senator when he wants to say something. Senator Paul knows the speech and debate clause of the Constitution absolutely protects him from whatever he says on the floor.
So he could name the whistleblower.
He probably could. He shouldn't do so if the Chief Justice has overruled it, and the Senate has not overruled the Chief Justice.
But hasn't the whistleblower, other people have used the name?
Yes.
Rand Paul's used it on the radio.
So would it matter?
Yes. Well, I guess the chief is enforcing a level of decorum. Look, if the Senate wants to enact a rule by 51 votes that the whistleblower's name can be revealed, then that'll be the law of the case, and the Chief Justice will not interfere.
Mitch McConnell does not want the name out.
At one point, people are going to have to look at it. It shows an agenda. It shows an operation that's been taking place over the course of a couple of years, and he's still there.
I think you're right. Republicans, the Democrats would say, look, there's a body of evidence that we discovered that is independent of him. That's what we've charged the president with. When is this going to end?
Hopefully Friday.
Tomorrow. Maybe.
Unless we see the mustached one, then it's a new ball game.
John Bolton?
And then we're going to see
Geraldo?
I know, right?
Where is Geraldo? Is here on Fridays. He's the mustache one.
Where's
All right,
the
Judge.
dastardly hand?
Judge, thank you very much.
Pleasure, guys. Enjoy Miami.
And enjoy the judge over on Fox Nation with Judicial File. All right. All right. It is now 14 minutes before the top
Where
of
is
the hour.
Jillian?
She's right behind you, as she always is when you ask that question.
But you got to look at the camera straight ahead. There you go.
Now you can see her.
Good morning. All right, let's start off with this story that we're following. U.S. Attorney appears to be dodging Tulsi Gabbard's $50 million lawsuit over these comments.
She's a favorite of the Russians because she's also a Russian asset. Yeah, she's a Russian asset.
The Congresswoman's lawyer, Brian Dunn, telling the New York Post they've tried to serve Clinton twice, but were turned away by Secret Service agents. Dunn says he can't believe Clinton would be, quote, so intimidated. Hillary's team did not comment on the Post report. Well, a teacher is brought to tears after getting a gift from his students. Watch this. The Nebraska students surprising their